Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's show, today's presentation. This is an emergency presentation. Well, it's actually about 6 to 8 weeks overdue. But I watched a video not long ago that was a promoted video. So the guy paid to get it, I guess, to promote his channel. And he was telling all about what he commonly sees, the #1 mistakes of homeowners doing it yourself. And I looked at the video and I said, this guy doesn't know his took is from a cactus. And I'm trying to be nice, and I don't like criticizing YouTube contributors because it's just not nice. But this guy clearly did not know what he was talking about. And I guess if I had to wager, if I had to bet a hamburger on it, I would bet he just watched other people on YouTube and regurgitated the same nonsense he had seen there. Okay, here's the thing. This is a residential duplex receptacle. If it just had one, if it was just a single round one plug-in device, it's a receptacle. This is a duplex, but we often call this a receptacle, although it's technically a duplex. Here's another one. Both of these are residential grade. Well, what makes residential grade residential? Well, it's intended for that purpose. And residential wiring, by and large, is not using commercial products and techniques, so we'll use mostly in the walls, we'll use NMB, or non-metallic branch circuit wiring. Some people will call it Romex. It's not Romex. It's non-metallic branch. Romex is a brand. It's sort of like down in the South. If we get a cold drink, we'll tell people, get us a taco, whatever hamburger thing, and get me a Coke. And somebody will say back, what kind of Coke do you want? It's because people from other parts of the country don't understand that Coke is just a fizzy drink, a pop, a soda, or whatever. We use it. So a lot of times people use that term Romex for any kind of non-metallic branch wiring about 14 gauge on up to within that area. Because there's also South Wire and other brands that make the same plastic coated type wire for inside of a house, usually 70 degrees, something like that. So this video I saw that kind of keyed me up, kind of triggered me just a little bit, was this young guy, and he was given his like top 5 things he sees people doing wrong when they're wiring. This is what you homeowners need to know if you're going to wire a device. And this kind of gave me a little heartburn when he said talks about backstabbing. Backstabbing of the device is wrong and it's dangerous and it's bad. Well, first fella, nobody who knows what they're doing has ever in the history of mankind ever called this backstabbing. This is not a stabbing device. This is a wiring device. And the code refers to it as a wiring device, one of many. It's a wiring device. Okay? It is back-wired, but there's something that he meant. And this is another reason why I know he was just confused. He's just kind of imitating what he saw on TV. If you read one of these, either brand, these are 2 different brands, you can see. This one's got paint and gunk all over it, right? Right? This has been pulled out. I'll talk about that in just a second. This one's brand new. If you read the back of the device, it will say, for push wiring, use solid wire number 14 only, copper. 14 gauge, solid only goes in the back of the device. You back wire with 14 gauge only in this residential device. And also this competitor's residential device, 14 gauge solid only. And it tells you on one of these, and I forget which one specifically, it says if you wire 12, you have to use the screw. It also has to be solid. So whenever I see someone on YouTube showing a residential wiring device, and they're trying to teach you, you have to put your stranded wire around on the screw a certain direction. I know they don't know what they're talking about, because you're not supposed to put stranded wire on a residential device. Back wiring is the preferred method. Your inspector will tell you he wants to have it back wired. And I also saw the same gentleman showing his promoted video. He had paid to have people watch him. I don't know how much he paid, but he had several thousand views, and it was at the top of my page. He was showing how it's dangerous and can start a fire because people use the back wiring. And he showed just a little bit where it's maybe trimmed just a little bit long. Oh, look, your ground wire could get up against that and short it out. Well, we do have breakers and overcurrent devices and things of this nature. But really, a little cat's hair of PVC not being on it is not going to be dangerous. I would rather have a little bit of it, about a 1/16 of an inch, to know that I got the wire fully inserted into the device. And if I wasn't smart enough, it even gives me the depth to trim it by right here on the back of the device. Where, by the way, it also tells you that this is the brasser looking ones are the hot wire, and the whiter looking ones are the neutral wire. And it also tells you again, 14 gauge only goes in those holes. It's rated for, you can put it on a 20 amp circuit with 12 gauge wire, but you have to use the screws. Now, I don't like them for specific reasons. Do you see how the screws stick out? I don't know if I can get my face in the way. Get enough background. All right. They're out to their outmost limit so that you can make your hook and you put your wire so that when you tighten that screw down, it wants to draw the wire under the screw, not squish it out. If you do it backwards, you'll know. If you have it flipped on the other side, when you turn it, it'll try to open the little hook up, and it won't want to stay as good. He was talking about you got to use a special screwdriver that's both a Phillips and a cheese head, or a flat and a Phillips together. You don't need that. You ought to be, if you're an adult, you ought to know what tight feels like. You don't want it over tight. You don't want to strip the screw out, and you don't want it so loose that it can wiggle with a little heat expansion. You want it tight. And I don't know how many inch-pounds it is, but I don't know how many of these things I've done. Never had a problem getting one too loose. So, what do we cover? Residential, back wiring, not backstabbing, 14 gauge solid wire, copper only. If you have 12, use the screws. And put your hook in the right direction so that when you tighten it down, it's trying to pull that loop underneath that screw. Now, both of these are exactly alike, so why does this one have crap all over it? Well, to release the wire, which is an issue, he was showing on there, look how this wire can be pulled right out of the back. That's the reason back wiring, he was calling it backstabbing. While backstabbing is dangerous, don't ever do that. This is a mistake. This thing is listed for that purpose. Okay, it's listed to be back wired. 14 gauge only, copper wire. Okay, it's listed for that. The problem is, to unwire it, you have to either use one set of those little holes to release the wire, and it pulls the contact off of the copper, or in this one, we have the wire goes in the holes, but we have a little slot there to take a screwdriver to release it that way. The gray ones release a little bit easier. But I can never be confident that I got it fully released and I didn't damage the internal contact that bites that copper wire. So I try to make a habit, if I take one of these off, I throw the flipping thing away. I don't want to take a chance that I damage it, because I tell you what, if you want to try an experiment, buy yourself one of these, wire it with a piece of 14 gauge wire, and then pull that wire out against its will and pleasure. Just pull that thing out or don't get it, and then watch next time you put a wire back in there, it won't hold very good. That's not a failure of the device. That's a failure of the guy behind the wiring. That's a person failure, not a device failure. Hey, appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, if you will, subscribe to the channel, either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, which this appears in. And if you can, check the notification bell or settings to make sure that you get notified when new videos are posted. Appreciate it. Also, so let's talk a little bit about what makes a commercial receptacle different. I'm not going to cut them open and show you, well, this one's got more thicker gauge internal parts of how it's done. I don't care. This is listed for residential use, solid 14 gauge only, 12 around the screws. This one says exactly the same thing, and anybody who can read the English language should read the back of the receptacles. They're not made for stranded wire. And if anytime you see somebody giving you a lecture on YouTube, taking a residential device and putting a stranded wire up underneath it, you need to probably not watch that video. Now, this is a commercial one. Okay, you'll notice a little bit different. It looks a little bit different. It's got a little back strap. If I'm not mistaken, you see a little metal center screw for the cover plate. It's actually a rivet that goes on the back side that makes electrical contact with this strap. This strap also goes to this kind of yoke thing. But we have a ground clamp here that catches one of the two mounting screws. On the residential ones, you see we just have the little plastic keepers to keep you from losing these, because most of the time these will go into a non-metallic box, plastic box. And we will use the green wire that's right here that my software is making look like it's shiny and silver, but that's a green wire. And it says on it, use copper or bare 14 gauge solid or whatever. It doesn't say 14 gauge, it says use copper, solid, or bare. So that's what that is here. But you also notice that it's plastic in the center, right? So, I mean, you're not really going to be pulling it off and on very often. If maybe in its entire lifetime, you may take a cover off if you're going to paint the house. This one is a little older version that you can tell because the way it's made, it's got the strap in between it, you see, and it's got a little screw hole in it. But this has something that the other two don't. And I don't know if I can adequately show you. See, right there on the terminals, you'll see a little clamp. Right, if I can move it just a little bit, right there, there's a little clamp. And guess what you can use, because this is got those little clamps. And you'll notice, by the way, it doesn't have any back wiring holes, right? Because in commercial wiring, most all commercial wiring is not done in wood frame building. In fact, even if it is wood frame, most electrical code, most building codes won't let you use Romex in commercial applications. They'll tell you have to still pull it in conduit, even if it's wood, which is kind of strange, because the big idea is that you don't scratch the non-metallic insulation. That's been an issue. Even going back to the Southern Building Code, it would tell you the only place that you could use Romex, which is a brand, non-metallic branch wiring, would be in a certain residential building. But you could also build a church out of 2x4, build it out of dimensional lumber, but it wouldn't let you wire it using the non-metallic wiring. But this is made for stranded wire, because most of the time in commercial work we have to put it in conduit or run like BX cable or something of this nature, an armor-clad cable. And most of the time that uses stranded wire. We'll use a lot of THHN. You might see some TFFN in 18 gauge for motor circuits or something like that. You may even see some MTW. All of those are typically stranded wire. So it wouldn't do us any good to make a device that needs copper solid to wire it up. So these are made to take stranded or solid wire, but they'll tell you on the back copper only, and they'll tell you what gauges to use. So it's pretty well self-explanatory. Just be real careful where you get your information from, because some people use YouTube to educate themselves and then repeat what they see on YouTube to other YouTubers. And if you don't know, it can lead you astray. So I'm no expert. I haven't been an electrician for lots of years, but I still remember a few things. And just read the device. For goodness sake, just read the device. Okay? And it's not backstabbing. We're from the South. We don't like backstabbing nothing. This is back wiring. It's a wiring device. We back wire it, and it will. And in back both of these, we'll talk about push wiring, and they're made for that. Don't think that push wiring a receptacle is somehow substandard. It's intended to do it that way. Just be aware that if you remove a wire, you have to be really careful not to damage the device itself. And for me, I just assume throw it away. If it's only 50 cents, I just assume get a brand new one anyway. Appreciate you watching. That's all.